Hey everybody, Richard Harris back here with Truth and Liberty at the National Religious Broadcasters Conference 2025, and have another amazing guest I want to introduce you to, and that's Joe Beckler, who is with the Christian Businessmen's Coalition, and is it coalition, right?
Connection.
Connection.
Yep.
All right, Connection. We're coalition. Your connection.
That works.
So,
yeah, I love it.
Yeah, Joe, thanks for joining me here at our booth here at NRB.
It's so good to be here. So good to be here.
Yeah. And so, Joe, you are actually a fellow Coloradan transplant, just like me.
Yes.
From the Centennial State. But you are vice president with this organization. And can you just begin by telling us what is it that you guys do?
Absolutely. So CBMC is an organization that has been around since 1930, started in the Depression. And as you can imagine, in a time of desperation, a group of men got together on their knees, praying for God to move. And what's interesting is that they were praying for God to move in the hearts of men in the marketplace. During a time of high stress. And that gathering for prayer and revival, it turned into a ministry that has been alive for 95 years. We're about to celebrate 100 years here in 2030. It's remarkable. Rooted in evangelism and discipleship and seeing the marketplace as the mission field. We like to talk about in the world, the marketplace is the largest unreached people group. And so we realize that if we can reach men in the marketplace, the impact in so many different domains of life is significant. So we've organized ourselves around strategies where we can look for measured impact in men through evangelism and discipleship.
Well, at Truth and Liberty, our mission is to educate and mobilize Christians in the 7 mountains of cultural influence. And of course, one of those mountains, and one of the most important, is the mountain of business, because money, as the old saying goes, makes the world go round. Of course, I don't adhere to that as a moral principle, but still the reality of the marketplace as a place of influence on our nation, on our culture, the values that are transmitted there, and everything else is really significant. And have you encountered in your work have you found it necessary to sort of teach Christians about the importance of engaging in ministry outside the context of the 4 walls of the local church?
I love that question, because a lot of the men that we're engaging, I mean, their first approach with Jesus could be somebody meeting them in the marketplace and engaging them in a conversation around faith. Now, a lot of times we'll engage men that are they're trying to figure out how to integrate faith into this domain of work. And it's really difficult. A lot of times we're kind of living with this narrative of, you really can't talk about that here.
Right.
But the reality is, yeah, you can. In fact, so many people, everybody's showing up to work. And they're showing up with all kinds of burdens, challenges, ups and downs. And so we love the fact that the marketplace is where we start. And so it does set this tone that Jesus belongs everywhere, not just within the walls of the church. The church can be this catalytic place of pushing people into other domains to be able to make impact. It should be that sending point, right? And we're finding that the marketplace is such a fun place where we're doing life, we're side by side, and we're able to engage people with the gospel and demonstrate that, yeah, that problem, the gospel works. That challenge, the gospel can help you. Jesus makes sense, and we're going to help you see how Jesus can come in and transform your life and give you purpose and meaning beyond maybe what popular culture is telling us about that notion of money being that thing that will ultimately satisfy you.
Yeah.
No, it's bigger than that.
Right, for sure. Inside of modern sort of evangelical Christianity, Joe, there's sort of a mindset too that, well, if I want to bring somebody to Christ, if I want to lead my neighbor, my family member, my friend, whatever, then I need to bring him to church, right? And that's what we do. And then the pastor, he'll get him saved, right? And we've got to break that down, because that's not really the model that Jesus gave us, is it?
Oh, absolutely. The whole notion of Great Commission, when we think about, or honestly, Richard, the reason I am a part of this mission is this idea that it's about how do we activate men to be able to be about the Great Commission, again, in all domains of society. And that it's not a matter of like, oh, phew, I got them to church, now they can sit in the pew or sit in a chair and hear somebody else kind of pitch the gospel to them. That works, don't get me wrong. I mean, I have a background of working in local church, I get that, and I've seen it work, but the more powerful notion is everyone activated. And so this idea of what CBMC wants to be about, like other organizations, is how can we activate men in the marketplace to be able to articulate their faith in a relational way, and also be able to have a track to run on that's very easy to replicate in helping other people grow and cultivate faith in their life. It's not rocket science, it's so easy. The Great Commission, lo and behold, what Jesus has designed, it's so easy for us to activate people to get out and do, especially in the context of the marketplace.
You know, that's really refreshing to hear that it's easy, because I think most Christians live under this sort of fear of sharing their faith, right? I'm so afraid to tell somebody about Jesus because they might not like it. They might respond in anger, or they may think I'm crazy, or whatever the fear is. How do you guys at CBMC help believers overcome that?
Well, I'll tell you my CBMC story.
All right.
So I went to seminary, and then when I got out, I was in my first full-time church position in North Atlanta. And I started meeting young professionals that were trying to figure out, just like, is this faith thing something I'd be concerned with?
Yeah.
And as I talked to them, as good as my seminary education was, what I found is that I did not have a way to help them like move closer to having a spiritual conversation. There were some like earlier steps that needed to happen. And so at that time, I met a couple guys from CBMC in North Atlanta, and they introduced me to Operation Timothy, which is the tool we use to kind of that track to run on to help people explore faith. And the first book of that 3-part series is all about engage people in a conversation and ask a lot of questions. Let them talk about what they think. Get a pulse of how they're understanding kind of spiritual worldview and God and all these things that, I mean, there are so many narratives about what people should think about God or think about spirituality. So just starting wherever they're at and helping them progressively move forward, and then trusting God, the Holy Spirit, to work within them to help them progress. It's actually a relational journey. You want to be in for the long term. And that's what I learned in those first few years with CBMC. And that transformed my journey. I went into church planning. I went to a part of Southwest Colorado that was very difficult spiritually. And I found that the strategy of relational engagement really worked, because you just meet people where they're at, you get curious, you learn about their worldview, and then you introduce Jesus to them in ways that helps kind of demyth the misinformation about Christianity. And then after a while, they're like, yeah, I'm in. This is huge. And so I don't know if I'm fully answering the question,
no,
but
it's great.
I'll tell you, it's really fun, because it's one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah.
But people are so hungry for faith to make sense.
Yes.
And when we can genuinely show them the truth, not be afraid of their questions, and introduce Jesus and let them explore Jesus, and then come to a place of like, yeah, I want in.
Yeah.
And then to be able to help them progress beyond that into a meaningful life of pursuing Jesus and understanding how do I do the basics? How do I live this thing out? It could be a long game, journey and adventure, which is what we really think is a great approach. But boy, it's fun.
Wow, that's amazing. I really want to learn more about what you're doing. But so tell us, do you have chapters or organizations in local communities, or how do people become a part of CBMC?
So you can go to cbmc.com and learn more about our locations across the United States. by the way, we're part of an international movement. There are 99 countries where CBMC exists. Our resources are being used in 148 countries, so it's really fun. We have digital discipleship tools that everyone can use. They're free for anyone, and they're wonderful, easy, very turnkey, scalable. And so we encourage people to explore. We have over 600 teams meeting across the United States, Alaska, Hawaii, South Florida, and everything in between. We're represented in so many different places. So you can find out more at that website, cbmc.com.
So how does this work, say, on a local level? Some guy I work with invites me to a CBMC meeting or something like that, and we go, and what is it, over lunch or something like that? And what should I expect from a local meeting?
There are so many on-ramps you can take. So a lot of men get involved in CBMC through an event. So like a prayer breakfast, a luncheon, or a unique gathering that is being conducted by local area leadership.
Okay.
At the same time, it could be like what happened to me is I had a CBMC guy engage me and invite me into the ministry. And so we really had those two different types of outlets. But if you go to our website, look at the local area of offerings, you can find out about events, and that's a really good way to get involved into one of our teams, which typically the way I like to think about it is you can attend an event or you can get involved in a team. There you experience brotherhood.
Yeah.
You find like-minded business leaders that they're living it out, and they're trying to figure out how to follow Jesus in their context. And then from there, you can go deeper and find what we think is the icing on the cake, and that is you can move into a life-on-life discipleship relationship with another man, and that'll help you grow in your faith. And then that's a multiplication factor, because as you get discipled, the way we do it, then along the way you're asked, hey, who are you going to disciple? So in my case, the guy who's discipling me, I've got someone doing that now actually. He looked at me midway through my time with him and he said, okay, now it's your turn. Who are you going to disciple? So now I've got a guy, his name's Matt, and I'm leading him through a discipleship journey, and it's so much fun.
That's awesome. You know, I don't think you are really fully discipled until you are discipling others, right? That final phase. Even the Lord, if you read the Gospels, it's, you know, you see he's ministering, and then he recruits his disciples, and then he says, now watch how I do this, healing the sick, preaching the gospel, and then he says, now you go and come back and tell me how it goes, and then finally releases them, you know, before he goes to heaven. And so, you know, he does make it simple for us, doesn't he, Joe? And we tend to complicate these things.
We do, and you're exactly right. It's in that when I may not have a lot of information, but if I'm just a couple steps ahead of somebody else, that's all I need, because we've got God partnering with us in this.
Amen.
And all you're doing is you're working the problems of life, integrating Jesus into those problems. You and I from Colorado, we see a lot of rock. And so, you know, rock climbers, particularly those that like bouldering, they talk about routes as problems. And they say, I want to work that problem and find a way up to the top. And so it's looking at a problem as an opportunity. And I love to think about discipleship that way, to say that when I meet with someone and I say, so, you know, what's happening in your life right now? And it could be something with their marriage, raising kids, an issue at work, an ethical dilemma they're facing, a life struggle of any sort. Well, that's the problem and the opportunity. And so in that discipleship relationship, we kind of organically work to solve the problem by saying, okay, how is Jesus and the gospel a solution to help you in the midst of whatever this problem is? And that's how we grow. And it's amazing, because yes, everybody benefits, the discipler and the disciplee, and this idea of just let's invite Jesus in and let him help us figure out how to work the problems of daily life.
You know, Joe, I was in private practice as a lawyer for 20 years and in law firms and all of this, and I was a name partner in a firm, and I did so many things. But you know, throughout that entire journey, I remember the feeling of wishing that there was some other guy or guys around me that believed in the Lord, that we could, you know, that I could bond with, that we could kind of do this together, instead of feeling more like, okay, I go to church on Sunday, I'm doing my best to raise my kids as Christians and that sort of thing, but then it's almost like I have to take that hat off when I go to work,
Right.
and pretend, not pretend, but you know, my love for the Lord will motivate me on the inside, but you find it challenging to bring that into your interactions with people on a regular basis. Does CBMC help believers, men, do that?
I think that's been when I capture stories for marketing purposes, it's that, and then I met someone from CBMC. You know how in the ancient church, when they were being persecuted, they would, the fish, Ictus, the thing they would draw one
sign,
they would draw one line and someone else would come along. Well, it's interesting how many men I meet that are saying, yeah, I didn't know that guy was a believer, but then I found out and it was like, oh, and then there's this synergy and connection that is a game changer, and it has a cultural impact because whether they're very outspoken about that faith or they're unified by it, all of a sudden the synergy and the strength of 2 believers, 3 believers, 4 believers coming together in a workplace environment, or maybe it's a state capitol, or maybe it's in a school, wherever it is, it's creating support and energy and a sense of brotherhood that it's like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm living with this worldview that seems to be in opposition to things happening around me, but there's others that are in the same boat with me. And so at CBMC, we try and create those points of synergy for the men that get involved. And a lot of times we have 2 different types of peer groups that we conduct. One called Young Professionals. And those are designed for young men that are they're finally hitting the barriers and the impacts of like real life, and they're kind of through that idealistic stage, and they're like, oh wow, this is tough, I need help. And so we bring in a sage and we coach and train them. And then we have trusted advisor forums that are all about executive level business owners that are getting together.
Wow.
And they're all facing similar problems and struggles, and they bring those to the table, and then either some of them work together and some of them work in different environments, but they have these huddles, these gatherings, and they go back into the work environments or into the home experience or wherever, and they're able to take that energy and excitement and brotherhood from what they're experiencing together and say, I'm not alone, I can do this. And there's others that are ahead of me and behind me that are working with Jesus to make this gospel a realization in other people's lives. And it's working for them. So it's really fun to see that happen.
Wow, that sounds awesome. Let me kind of shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And talk to you more about a sort of a 30,000 foot sort of cultural political view. In the last 15 years or so, maybe 20, what we've seen in America in the business mountain is we've seen sort of an intentional infiltration of the highest levels of authority and influence in the business world by people that don't share a biblical worldview, by people that hold more to a materialistic and even Marxist, communist, atheistic viewpoint. And with that has come a lot of censorship, a lot of woke, ideology being forced on companies, and so on. And I think most of our viewers will understand what I'm talking about. But how did that happen from your perspective? Has the church dropped the ball? Is that a result of us not realizing the importance of kind of a more holistic Great Commission approach, or what do you think?
Wow, how much time do we have? I think that I don't know if I'm in a position to point the finger one place or another, but what I will say is that again, I'm going to borrow a Colorado metaphor.
Okay.
I mean, I love to ski, and I was actually up in Alaska skiing with my son this past weekend. He lives up there.
In Alaska, wow.
Yeah, and we climbed up this one mountain, and you're looking down the face of that mountain, and you look at it and you do one of 2 things. You look at it and you're tentative. And if you're tentative, you're not going to have a great experience. But if you look at that face and you're cautious but you're confident, you're going to have the ride of your life. And that's the same case for any kind of ski experience or any kind of adventure like that, is that your posture approaching it matters. Your level of confidence doesn't mean you're going to be perfect, doesn't mean you're not going to fall, but your level of confidence matters. And I think that what's missing and what has probably contributed to that 15 years of decline of a voice of reason around, hey, we should be talking about spirituality and God and a worldview that's alternate to some of the different messages that are out there. I oftentimes think it's a matter of like, there's a loss of this posture of confidence.
Yeah.
That if we believe Jesus is who he says he is, then this is kind of a go for broke proposition that we really need to send it. We need to be willing to go to the edge of the head wall and say, I'm going to lean in. I'm going to lean in, and I'm probably going to take some hits for this. But if I'm following Jesus, and Jesus is everything that we know him to be, then there's no other option.
Yeah.
That tentative approach that we've taken over the years, that back off, that I'm not going to say my piece, I'm going to keep that to myself. I'm not allowed to talk about that in my school environment or my work environment. Those are the lies.
Yeah.
And they've created this level of tentativeness that is rather sad. And the loss is huge because all it's doing is it's eliminating certain conversations in the public space.
Right.
I love this vision of, and I saw it even in my boys raised in Colorado. They're in their 20s now, and I remember when they were in the public school system. I remember them coming home saying, "Yeah, Dad, we can't really talk about spirituality here." And I'm thinking, really, you can't bring that part of your life into the public forum? Really? What else could you not bring in? What are you told? And so I think that they were conditioned that I got to be tentative.
Yeah.
And what I want to say is, hey, you only live once. Jesus
That's good.
is everything that we say he is. We need to live with a sense of confidence that gives us the ability to know that, no, actually we, especially thankfully in our country, we do have rights.
Yeah.
We can lean in and we can speak in an appropriate, loving, graceful, rooted in power way about who God is, who Jesus is, and what it means to love our neighbor and to love God, and let that transform the way we think about culture and all the issues around us. So,
do you think that we in modern Christianity, especially in the West, have sort of been taught that to represent Jesus means you have to be nice, right? Instead of being truthful or speak the truth in love, we tend to think we're supposed to tolerate, we're supposed to accept, we're supposed to be nice. And to be confrontational in any way is viewed oftentimes as being not loving, so you must not be like Christ. But, when we look at the Gospels, Jesus was quite confrontational at times, especially with the religious, but...
Yes.
Yeah.
His marketing plan wasn't that great.
Yeah, you look at, John chapter 6, when you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood, and then everyone's going, what? And he says, you guys going to leave me too?
Yeah.
And like he didn't care about the numbers,
Yes.
but what do you think about that as a part of the diagnosis for the situation we're in? Is do we need to be bolder in speaking the truth?
I appreciate that question because I think about the Beatitudes. It talks about the meek inheriting the world. So there's this notion of, we hear that word meek, and we go, well, that sounds kind of soft.
Yeah.
But my understanding of that Greek word is it's rooted in that Aristotelian philosophy of bridled anger. So it's more like a war horse. It's got a bridle.
Yeah.
And it's being held back.
Yeah.
It's controlling its anger. It's controlling its rage. It's controlling its force. It's in control of the emotions that so many times are out of control, especially in the public forum today.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like things are so polarized because of the anger and unbridled anger and unbridled use of, just intolerance. And so what I think we need to be is, bold is a great word. I appreciate you using that one. I think that boldness rooted in love, boldness rooted in this kind of tenacious willingness to stand firm and ask good questions.
Yeah.
Continue to challenge people and think think critically about what we're being told and what we believe, it's a game changer. And you're right. I think that if we have this notion that Christianity is about being nice, well, I look back and you look at history, and it's the bold, courageous representations of faith. They were gutsy.
Yeah.
They were willing to step into places where, I mean, their lives were at stake.
Yeah.
And that could be the case for us if we were put in such a situation. But I truly believe that boldness rooted in grace and love is the way to go.
Well, I was trying to find a scripture just then, but there, in the book of Leviticus, the commandment to love our neighbor did not originate in the Gospels. It first appears in the Old Covenant, and it's in Leviticus. I think it's chapter 17, but I couldn't find it just then. But one of the most interesting things is that immediately before we're commanded to love our neighbor as ourselves, or immediately after, it says, thou shalt not suffer sin upon thy neighbor, but thou shalt in all wise rebuke him, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Our failure to, confront sin or speak the truth, it feels like love because it's nice, but it's actually not love because you're allowing someone to live in deception and darkness. So, anyway, powerful thought, right?
That's such a healthy, balanced approach, and it's love, right? We think about parenting,
right?
What does that look like when it's healthy?
Yes.
It is. It's this sense of my love is going to be rooted in firmness and a genuine, earnest desire that I'm going to coach my kids to avoid sin, to stay away from it, and to challenge the strains of thinking that are destructive and hurt. And so, this idea of, and I think in the marketplace especially, when we think about love God with every bit of who you are, and then love your neighbor, that commandment is just, I told one of my kids recently, I said, I honestly feel like following Jesus, those two things they're my daily assignment, and they are so hard. Yeah. Because of my own brokenness.
Right. Because of our flesh.
But this idea of truly loving my neighbor, what does that look like? That is, it's pretty radical in our current age, where we like to pick and choose, right?
We do, and we want to chip away at the edges of that because it's so difficult, so uncomfortable. But I'm so thankful that there are men like you and organizations like CBMC that are out there discipling and making disciples and training the church to do the work of the ministry, just like Ephesians 4 says. So, Joe, thank you for joining me here at NRB and let this opportunity to sit down and know more about you and your ministry.
Well, likewise, it's an honor to be here, and thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for it's teamwork.
Yeah,
together.
Amen. Thank you so much. All right.